Welcome, everyone. This is Stacy Stanley, Superintendent of Edina Public Schools. And I really want to say thank you so much for joining us this evening for our community input session about budget reduction, reallocation, revenue generation, or our BERG process. I'm really excited to have you here. Your voice is so important as we go through this process. A couple of weeks ago, our business director, Mert Woodard, shared with the school board that we currently would have a $4 million shortfall if we kept everything exactly the way it was, all of the staffing, all of the expenses, everything like that this year, and we moved it into next year. And we received the same income, if you will, receipts that we have received. And so tonight is really an opportunity to really provide detail to the community. We've had a couple of other face-to-face sessions, and next week, if you just think, oh, I really need to get to a face-to-face session, we do have a couple more face-to-face sessions available, and those sessions can be found on the website under our Finance Budget 2024 website. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And it would be great if you could just type in the chat, give us an idea of who is in the room. So if you go ahead and just type in the chat, and it'll be great for everyone to get an idea of who is in the room. Added on the YouTube side. All right, so just to give you an idea for how we will connect with one another tonight, there is a chat box in YouTube as you're coming in on YouTube, and that's how you will submit information. But I'm going to go ahead and get started because I want to let you know that all of the decisions that we are making around budget are driven by our vision and our mission. Our vision is for each and every student to discover their possibilities and thrive. And we have certainly worked hard over the past 18 months to really start to bring in high quality programming to whether it's STEAM or whether it's the dual language Spanish immersion or whether it's our comprehensive literacy program, to make sure that each and every student in our district is discovering their possibilities and thriving. And then, of course, we have our mission. Our mission is that Edina Public Schools is a dynamic learning community, delivering educational excellence and preparing all students to realize their full potential. Through academics, activities, and opportunities, we encourage creativity, we foster curiosity, and develop critical thinking skills. We support every student's educational journey by creating a caring and inclusive school culture that supports the whole student. So again, our vision and our mission, when I'm working with my team, that is driving any decisions that we have to make as we look at budget reductions or reallocations, or as we really try to be creative and look for revenue generation as well. So for this evening, this is the general agenda. We're going to use a process called IROD. In just a couple of minutes, our business director, Mert Woodard, is going to come on and he's going to provide some information, overall information about where we are with our budget. That I stands for information. Then we're going to give you a chance to provide your reactions. Again, those will come through the chat feature, and any questions that you might, the chat link, any questions that you might have, you'll be able to put those in there, and Mert and I will be able to do our best to answer those questions. And then the O stands for options or ideas. And what we want to hear from you during that time is, what are the priorities that we need to make sure we focus on? And so what are the must-haves? What are the items that we should not take off the table, if you will? And then finally, that D, it stands for decision, and we'll talk a little bit later about a timeline and how that decision is made. Mert is going to talk about education funding, particularly in Minnesota. He's going to go over generally our forecast for fiscal year 2024 with the general fund. And then again, we'll have an opportunity to hear your reactions and to answer questions. So at this point, I am going to invite our Director of Business Services, Mert Woodard, onto the program.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. Good evening, those attending virtually tonight. Pleasure to be here. Before getting into the Edina-specific discussion tonight, I'm going to speak a little bit about education finance in the state of Minnesota, which will provide greater context for tonight's discussion. I would also like to remind everyone at this time that for more detailed information, please visit the business services page at edinaschools.org, where you'll find the district's most recent financial statements and also the most recent Truth in Taxation presentation, both of which will provide much greater detail than what you'll hear from us tonight. Overall, public education finance in the state of Minnesota is extremely complex. Not only is it super regulated by the legislature, the majority of the funding is also tied to very complex formulas that aren't easily understood by the public or those even working in education. The easiest revenue source to understand is the basic education formula. This is a formula that's given to every school district across the state of Minnesota, and it represents about 47% of this district's general fund revenue. So the district's structure and programming are super sensitive to any changes to this formula. The calculation here is extremely simple. It's a per pupil allotment that's multiplied by the number of students we serve on any given day. While the formula allowance is a stable source of revenue, we found that over the past 20 years, it doesn't keep up with inflation and the rising costs of education. As you can see from the chart that's displayed right now, over the last 20 years, the formula has increasingly lost value to inflation, to the point where if the formula had been tied to inflation since 2003, we would receive an additional $1,263 per pupil above and beyond what we do now, which represents about $11.8 million for the Edina Public Schools. That is greater than the unassigned fund balance that we ended the previous fiscal year with. You're going to sense a general theme of inadequacy as we speak tonight, and one area where that's extremely apparent is in the broken special education revenue system. Not only is the special education revenue formula extremely complex, there are about 78 different calculations actually that derive the revenue. More importantly, it's extremely deficient. In the 1970s, the federal government mandated that a certain level of services must be provided by law to our special education learners, which we really love to do. However, the federal government has not fully funded that mandate, and neither has the state of Minnesota. In Edina, the cost of our special education programming is about $22.5 million per year, and the total revenue we receive is only $14 million, leaving a difference of about $7.5 million. That gap is something that we commonly refer to as the cross subsidy, and that cross subsidy is funded from our basic general education aid as well as local property tax dollars, which take away from some of the other opportunities we can provide to all of our students across the district. You'll see a number of other programs listed on the screen in front of you. Those are also areas which suffer from cross subsidies to certain degrees, much smaller in nature than the special education cross subsidy. However, they all add to the funding issue that we suffer from. While we do strongly believe that the state doesn't provide enough funding to school districts across the state, and we are engaging our legislative action committees in order to better that situation. We have to acknowledge that we make decisions locally that only exacerbate the issue. That's because we provide a great number of programs and opportunities for our students, opportunities that each and every student does deserve. However, that does come at a premium price. Overall, the fact that the basic education formula lags behind inflation and that there's a significant special education cross subsidy, that means that each year, each school district virtually across the state has the problem of having to cut budget simply to maintain their operations, and that's no different in Edina. That brings us to our projections for next fiscal year. Please remember that these are initial and preliminary in nature and do not represent reality at this point in time. We're taking a level services revenue-based budgeting approach to our budget development. Basically, that means, as Dr. Stanley mentioned earlier, we're assuming that everything that is in place today, meaning staff, programs, schools, etc., will be in place next year. From there, we've calculated what we think our additional revenue will be and also what our additional expenditures will be. The number one driver of revenue in the state of Minnesota, about 80%, is tied to enrollment. That's an area where we're being extremely conservative with our projection. As of today, we're serving about 8,500 students, K through 12, and at this time, we're projecting stable but flat enrollment of 8,563 students for next school year. This is a figure that we'll continuously monitor up until the start of next school year, and we will staff accordingly to that. For the basic education formula, which, as I said earlier, was our main revenue source, we're projecting an increase of 2%, meaning that we'll increase from about $6,863 per pupil to $7,000, adding about $1.3 million in revenue for next school year. Over the last 10 years, the formula has an average increase of about 2%. So we might be somewhat conservative considering that there's a massive state surplus, which I'm sure you've heard about. Please keep in mind that every percent that's added to the formula represents about $665,000 of additional revenue. So it would take about 6% from the state for us to eliminate our budget gap for next year. The operating referendum, which was approved at the December regular meeting as part of our Truth in Taxation hearing, is one area where we do have some local autonomy to increase our funding. In 2017, the residents of Edina Public Schools and the Edina City voted to increase our operating referendum and tie it to inflation. So for next school year, we'll see an additional $229 per pupil or an additional $2.2 million of additional revenue. Our capital projects levy is also one that's tied to inflation. So when the property tax base grows, that revenue source grows accordingly and in proportion. We're expecting an additional $450,000 from that revenue source. At this time, we're projecting that all other revenue sources will remain flat, meaning that our additional revenue in total above this year will be about $4 million. Moving over to the expenditure side, staff compensation accounts for about 80% of the district's expenditures. That makes it the key driver of any changes to expenditures overall. Assuming there's no change to the number of students we serve, meaning the number of staff we employ, we're expecting an additional $5.7 million of expenditures for staff compensation, or about 4%. We're also assuming increases to supplies, materials, contracted services, utilities, and other non-salary items in the amount of $1.7 million, or 4.59%. In total, we expect to spend about $8 million more next year than we are this year, offset by an additional $4 million of revenue, leaving a deficit of $4 million, assuming no changes to our operations or staffing. Again, I'd like to remind everyone that these are preliminary and conservative projections. At this time, they do not represent reality, and we're working very diligently as a school district to prevent that reality from occurring. I think you may be muted, Dr. Stanley.
Sorry for those technical difficulties, everyone, but we are back on. So now is the opportunity for you to share your initial reactions, comments, or questions. There's a link there that says reactions in the description box. And so to do that, you're just going to click that on that link, and then you can just start typing in as we receive them. I will go through them, read them out loud, and so that everyone else who is participating in the webinar is able to hear your thoughts and reactions as well. And also, what questions might you have? What's circling through your heads right now as you hear the information and reflect on the information that Mert shared with you? So we're just going to take a moment to wait till everyone has a chance to get in to that, get into that link and start to share your thoughts. And Mert had shared earlier that if the base funding for our students had kept up with inflation, we would have nearly $12 million. And then he also shared about the cross subsidy. Our cross subsidy for our students who receive special education services is about $7 million. And our students with special education, individualized education programs deserve that instruction. They need to have that instruction, and we are never going to pull back or to provide the minimum instruction so that we don't have that cross subsidy. That would be an immediate, if the state funded that would be $7 million that we would receive back. And then there's another cross subsidy for students who receive multilingual learner supports, and that is $1.2 million. We add that up together, that would be a difference of $20 million in our general fund. You can imagine what that would do to help support all of the great things. I have been out talking in the community and sharing, my vision for a couple of years, in that I want, starting with the class of 2027, each student will have had an internship, they will have, or an apprenticeship, depending on the pathway they want to take. They will have earned a micro-credential, or they would have earned an industry standard certification. I have this idea that we will have a pilot training program at our high school. And so you can imagine just how much help that $20 million would be. And so I am out advocating along with my superintendent peers. Yesterday, our Legislative Action Committee hosted a breakfast. We had our representatives, Representative Edelson there, Representative Joachim there, to really share where the legislature is at this point. One thing that you could do is to contact our legislators, contact Representative Edelson, contact Representative Joachim, to let them know that we really advocate for for the basic formula allowance to be aligned with inflation. We advocate for the cross subsidy for special education and for English learner services to be fully funded. That is incredibly important for our system in Edina. I don't see necessarily any questions or reactions coming in. So I'm I'm going to give it a couple more minutes because I have to believe that there are reactions. Your reactions when they come in, they don't capture in this spreadsheet. They will not capture your email address. They will not capture your name or anything like that. Just your reactions will be captured. And then, like I said, I'll be able to share those out with other members who are on the call right now. Or I'm sorry, on the webinar right now. And I believe there are nearly 20 people who are on the call right now. Okay, so I think we may have figured it out. If you could go and refresh your screen and then start to type in, I think we're going to be able to get to your reactions now. So an individual had said, thank you for the conservative approach and for this information sessions. If all things stay the same, could we expect this shortfall every year moving forward also? Mert, do you want to talk about that? We're going to go ahead and bring Mert back up on stage. And do you want to talk about that?
I'm not actually seeing the question. Could you repeat that, please,
Abs-
Dr. Stanley?
Absolutely. So the question is, if all things stayed the same,
Mhm.
could we expect this shortfall every year moving forward also?
Absolutely. If the shortfall was not addressed next year, it would simply grow in the subsequent year. My initial projections say that a untreated $4 million deficit would grow to about $6.6 million 2 years from now. So we really need to address this potential issue now so that we avoid severe consequences in the future.
Mhm. One of the things that we did not talk about was our fund balance. And Mert, could you just talk a little bit about what a fund balance is, what our policy level fund balance is in Edina Public Schools?
Absolutely. So the fund balance is basically the revenues less the expenditures over time. So since the district was founded, um, on July 1st, 2022, our fund balance, our unassigned fund balance was about $8.1 million, which represents roughly 7.4% of our general fund expenditures. The board policy dictates a minimum fund balance of about 6%. And that fund balance really can be seen as a savings account or a rainy day fund, something that protects the district from unintended disasters, global pandemics, unforeseen expenditures, things of that nature. And also it's something that the credit rating agencies look at. Edina is one of 3 school districts in the state and one of 93 out of about 13,000 public school districts in the country that hold a AAA bond rating from Moody's credit rating agency. That's the highest rating possible and one that gives us access to the best interest rates on the market when we go out for debt, which is a direct benefit to taxpayers of the district. So it's really important that we maintain our financial stability, not only for the current year, but for generations to come.
Thanks for that, Mert. I apologize for that. You would think that going through the pandemic and everything, I would know to unmute myself. So I apologize for the delay in your ability to submit your reactions, questions. If you still do not have access to that, if you just go ahead and refresh your screen, you should be able to have editing access and you would be able to go ahead and send those questions, comments, initial reactions into us. And again, we don't see the email, we don't see a name. All we see are the questions or comments. So, what other initial reactions might you have before we move on to the next level, which will be what we really want to hear from you? And that is, what are the priorities that you want us to consider? Um, what are the items that we absolutely cannot take off the table from your perspective? We'll take it one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and transition into the next question. Okay, I do see. Oh, okay. So, an individual wrote, I did notice that I couldn't submit if I wasn't logged into the Edina account. And so, let's see here. The way we do have that set up is that anybody should be able to access that who has the link. Um, how about if you try to refresh one more time, and hopefully that'll bring that up for you. All right. So, what I'd like to do is to have you start just thinking about what are those priorities that you hold from your perspective as a member of the Edina Public Schools community. Maybe you've heard some things from your children. Maybe you have some very specific things that you have in mind. Maybe you are a grandparent and you have some ideas. And so, if you could just take a minute to think about that. And in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to begin to submit your priorities and ideas into that using that Google form that's linked in the description box. We'll give you a couple of minutes and we'll come back together. Okay, so again, you are going to select the link that says priorities and ideas that's in the description box. And you should be able to go in and just start typing in what those priorities are. And we'll go ahead and be able to do the same thing like we did with the reactions and share those out. Again, this does not collect email addresses, it does not collect names, and so it will be completely anonymous. So we have our first comment coming in. And um, the comment says there is still, let's see here, okay. There is still learning gaps with students from the 2020 to 2022 school year and would like for the priorities to have more staff in the classroom and not in the roles that aren't outside of the classroom. Students need more support with direct support. There needs to be transparency on roles that aren't involved with students directly. Okay, that's great. That's an example of exactly what we're looking for. So more staffing in that's working with students directly, as opposed to um, staffing that doesn't work with students directly. Question here: how can we bring volunteers in the community to come in to support small groups and working with students with reading, writing, and math skills? I build in each month several half days to get out into the schools and make certain that my presence is out in the schools, and it really helps me to see what's happening in our schools. I know that I've met volunteers who are in helping. Is at Concord, and there actually was a grandma and grandpa that were in helping to support small groups. I would say reach out to the principal of your school and let them know that you're interested. What are the budget priorities? To retain high quality teachers, keep class sizes low. Thank you. That's exactly the type of priorities and what we're talking about. We are interested in hearing from the community. So please just continue to enter the priorities, and I will continue to read them out as we receive them so that you can hear what other fellow community members are thinking as well. Again, you're going to click on the link that says priorities and ideas in the description box, and that is the link that you'll be submitting the information in. Okay, not seeing any additional priorities at this point. I went back to check the list of reactions, initial reactions, comments, questions as well, and I don't see any additional information in there either. Give it a few more minutes, and then, oh, here we go. So it reads, Edina has a high percentage of staff that have been in the district for a long time. A majority of these staff have master's degrees or above. I have had students go through the district, and the staff that have had a lot of history and experience in the district are a huge priority. How can we make sure that we are able to retain them? So some things that we've started this year, that is a phenomena with education across districts and superintendents. We are meeting about that as well. But one of the things that we are really looking at that we've started in the district, in particular this year, is focusing on the wellness of staff. And so we have a district-wide wellness committee that has quite a few people on it. Dr. Anne Marie Leland, our director of community education and strategic partnerships, is the project lead, and she has a smaller group, an executive committee that consists of community members. Kathy Rendelman sits on there. We have teachers, we have nurses that sit on there, and then the wider group for the planning consists of teachers, administrators, really folks who are in our schools working with our students every day. And we're getting feedback from them. What are some things that can allow you to continue to heal, as the pandemic was very hard on everyone, and especially hard on the educators who were right there working with students. And so some things that we've done that we've received really positive feedback on. We had a You Are Super day in schools, where each school, we sent out soup out to the schools, and that's where the super comes from. Staff really said that they appreciated that. Most recently, we have had massage therapists that have been in the schools. I was out in schools the other day, and Countryside Elementary, I was there, and actually they said, hey, there's an open spot in one of the massage chairs. Would you like to take one? I said, nope, we're going to save that for teachers. But that is something that staff have said that they are really, really appreciative of as well. We are also surveying staff to find out what will benefit them. And then we're really working with administrators to make sure that we have a strong culture and climate. Regardless of the industry that you work in, we know that morale impacts retention. And so we are really working on that morale. Great question. Another more statement, but high quality teaching staff, support services for students, and wellness. Very concerned about the mental health of students. Absolutely. We continue to look for ways to make certain that students are able to have access to mental health services right on campus at the high school. And then we're also looking for ways that our students can have access to those mental health services in our other campuses. And so we partner with the Edina Education Fund, and we are so grateful for their monetary supports to help seed the onboarding of mental health practitioners. And then we are able to continue with that, which again is really important for our students and important for why we really need to hone in and focus on getting the monies for our cross subsidy, as well as that basic formula being aligned with inflation. We actually are about to start surveying our students. We use Panorama, and the Panorama survey has some questions in there that help focus on and let us know how our students are doing with their mental health. And that is really important data that we are now able to track year over year to really determine if we are making progress in supporting our students. Another question: how do you balance the ability to be innovative in programming with needing to fund basic core needs of students? That is a great question. And I will tell you, one of the ways that we do that is through a great partnership with our Edina Education Fund. For instance, this fall, we were one of only 39 districts around the world to be accepted, the only in Edina to be accepted to participate in the student space flight experiments program. And that is the innovation that we want to see with STEAM programming. Edina Education Fund actually funded that application. It was $27,000. We had more than 175 teams of students participate 5th through 12th grade. In addition to that, I mentioned that Edina Education Fund is really helping us to support our mental health needs of our students. And it is through those partnerships that we're able to do this. In addition, Edina Education Fund is also supporting our comprehensive literacy plan efforts. They have supported our efforts to work on dyslexia by helping to fund getting our teachers trained in the letters training, which really hones in and focuses on the science of reading. So, we have to look for creative ways, as Mert said. We define excellence, and we expect excellence for our students. In the state constitution, it says that in Minnesota, schools are expected to provide an adequate education. While in Edina, for generations, we've provided an excellent education, and we're continuing to look for creative ways and partnerships that allow that to happen. So another comment that came in is the district is doing a nice job with balancing the budget with district goals. Please continue to keep the transparency open to the public. Absolutely. We have a website. If you go onto our website and you type in 2024 budget in the Find It Fast, you will come to a link to that website, and you will be able to get updates for that. We will continue to give updates at the board, and then continue to provide updates to our administrators so that they can share those with the community as well. Here's another statement. I've had students that have received special education services. Please do not cut back on the supports in place. Currently, schools are short paraprofessional staff, and that has a negative impact on students. How can we continue to make the focus, student-centered? It seems like has been more special education leadership roles at the district level that weren't always there. One of the things, our former director, Jeff Jorgensen, retired, and I was able to hire Jody Remsing, who came to us from Wayzata Public Schools. Jody has an extensive background in the area of special education. And when she came in, one of the things that she spoke with me about was the need to really have very specific secondary leadership supports and very specific elementary leadership supports. That is how we will continue to elevate our special education programming. I will say this, I firmly believe that our special education students deserve the supports that they're getting, and we will not hold back those supports that the team identifies that they need. And so when I say that we have that $7 million cross subsidy, that's not to say that we would ever pull back or try to save money there. It is to say that we are advocating to get the funds to make certain that our students are, their IEPs are funded. Another question, would there be any consideration for any public or private partnerships for programming classes that could offset the cost? And is that allowed for public schools? So when it comes to actual general education, special education classes, teachers have to have license. Unlike private schools, oftentimes they don't have to have those specific licensures in their area. Oftentimes they can bring in, organizations that are providing supports. But as a public school entity, we are required for our teachers to have licensures. And that's important because someone said earlier that most of our teachers hold master's degrees. We have many teachers that are nationally board certified, which means that they could go and teach in any state in the United States, and they are nationally certified teachers, are very rare. It is a very comprehensive, rigorous process that you have to go through to become nationally certified. We need and want the teachers within our system to make sure that we can continue to provide an excellent education. So, no, we aren't able to build those for general instruction. Now, what I will tell you is that one thing that is part of my vision as we move forward is 612 pathways, and that aligns with the vision I have around apprenticeships, internships, micro credentials, and industry standard certifications. And Dr. Leland, our Director of Community Education and Business Partnerships, is out there building partnerships with local businesses, major businesses, to make certain that our students will have access to those internships and those apprenticeships. That does help. That does enhance that classroom learning experience. I'm going to check and see if there were any other initial reactions that those who are participating shared, and I don't see any right now. We'll give it a little bit more time, and then I'm going to transition into what our next steps will be. This is all incredibly helpful. Um, if I do a quick summary, knowing that we have to do a deeper dive into this qualitative data, it is, we don't want class sizes to be impacted. We want to be able to keep our high quality teachers. Um, figure out how to continue with innovative programming using some creative strategies, because that's important, and continue to be transparent and continue to provide quality special education services. Give it a couple more minutes before we move on to let you know what the next steps will be. And again, you can submit initial reactions or any priorities, ideas that you want us to focus on as we move forward in looking at budget reductions or reallocations or revenue generation. While we're waiting, I will just say again that to strongly encourage you and would be just very grateful if you would reach out to your representative in the legislature to let them know just how important it is for us to be fully funded for the special education and English learner cross subsidy, and for the base funding formula that we receive to be aligned with inflation. That just makes, again, such a difference. And as Mert said, with aligning the base formula with inflation alone, we would have nearly another $12 million to help serve our students. Okay. Couple of more statements here that I see. Just great information and appreciate the responses. And then the pathway idea is wonderful and an amazing opportunity for so many students. We are feeling that same type of energy right now with our work on pathways. We actually had the Stanford Design School come in to provide some professional development to our design team, which, by the way, includes students across our secondary schools in 5th grade, because that student voice is so important. And so we are as excited. We know that this is going to allow us to innovate on and elevate, our quest to define excellence. So thank you for those comments. And I think what we'll do now, this is what I will say. Those reactions, uh, you'll be able to, as long as you keep the link, you'll be able to continue to submit your reactions even after we are done this evening, and you'll be able to continue to submit your priorities and ideas even after we're finished. I only ask that you submit them by February 1st. We are going to take just all of this qualitative data and begin examining it on February 2nd. So please, if you didn't get a chance to put information in using the links, go ahead, make sure that you keep them, and you can add that later. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about what are the next steps. So Mert and I started our community feedback sessions on Monday. We will run these through February 1st. Again, their site level. Of course, we have our virtual this evening. If you, again, did not garner the information that you were hoping for, we do have a couple of more sessions next week. So on Monday, January 30th from 6 to 7 p.m., we will be at Valley View Middle School Cafe. Our honed in focus is the Valley View and EHS communities, but these sessions are open to anyone in the community. And then on Wednesday, February 1st from 6 to 7 p.m., we'll be at Highlands and really targeting the countryside and Highlands communities. And just the same, they are open to anyone. So please, if you're interested in coming face to face because you just feel like you need a little bit more information, please do join us. So then like I said, starting February 2nd through the 9th, we are going to do a deep dive and analyze all of the feedback that we've collected, and then develop an overall summary. We're going to be looking for themes and patterns that we're seeing. We will put that into a comprehensive report form that includes a set of administrative recommendations. And that draft of those administrative recommendations will be posted in the school board packet on Friday, February 10th, for the February 13th school board meeting. And then that will also be posted on that website that I talked about earlier, the fiscal year 2024 budget and planning webpage. So you'll be able to garner that information at either of those places. And on February 13th, the board will go through the information. They most likely will have additional questions, may give us some feedback, may tell us to go back and work on a few things, and then we will bring the final recommendation to the board at the end of February with the goal of having the recommendation for the Berg by March 1st. So again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate you taking out your time. We know that you're incredibly busy. And I said before, we use our vision and our mission to drive all of these decisions. And at the forefront of our vision and mission is our students and our teachers. So thank you very much. I should say students and all of our staff, including our teachers. Thank you very much and have a great evening.